Hello, everyone. I'm here today to talk about the correspondence between Clark Coolidge and Bernadette Mayer. For the better part of the last decade, I've had the privilege of preparing this correspondence for publication with my friend and colleague, Stephanie Anderson. So I'd like to open up several entangled threads of this project and to reflect a little bit on the intellectual and haptic work of editing. It was important to us to take a light touch when presenting these letters, but taking a light touch paradoxically required a great deal of work and collaborative decision-making. And by sharing information about the letters and our editing process, and also just opening it up in the discussion for questions about that, I hope to generate some excitement about the letters and to address a perhaps surprising decision for the book, which will be published this fall as All This Thinking, the Correspondence of Bernadette Mayer and Clark Coolidge by University of New Mexico Press. And this surprising decision is that the book only covers 3 years of a quite expansive correspondence. So my talk is centered on the question, why focus on the letters between these poets from September 1979 to October 1982? So I'll spend less time talking in detail about the actual content of the letters, but I invite questions that might expand upon this in our discussions or our further conversations beyond the panel. It's been really exciting to hear about the work on Bernadette. And I'm really enthusiastic to talk about it. So first, the big picture. In total, the letters traverse 3 decades, and they document Coolidge and Mayer's support for each other's practices, even and especially when those practices go against expectations within their microsocial worlds. They published each other's poems in their little magazines at the mid to late 1960s, met and became friends in the late 1960s, collaborated in the early 1970s, and lived near each other from July of 1975 to September of 1979, when Mayer and her then partner, Louis Warsh, moved their growing family from New York City to Worthington, Massachusetts, and then to Lenox, near the home of Coolidge, his wife Susan, and their daughter Celia. The Mayer-Warsh family then moved to Henniker, New Hampshire for a year in 1979 before returning to New York, where Mayer became the director of the Poetry Project in 1980. Stephanie and I collected these letters, which were primarily in the special collections at the University of California at San Diego and the special collections at the University of Buffalo, and then transcribed them. Stephanie transcribed the Mayer side, I transcribed the Coolidge side, and then we had to date and organize a significant portion of the correspondence through basic detective work and a shared spreadsheet. In total, the correspondence is approximately 200,000 words. We did this, our transcriptions always at a distance from each other and in different time zones, so our own correspondence behind the correspondence was an important baseline for our other work and for keeping the momentum going on this project through various challenges. As Stephanie and I transcribed and organized the letters, we found it helpful to divide them into 5 phases or periods of the correspondence. From 1965 to 1972, the poets were getting to know each other. They begin with mutual editorial solicitations, Jogglers for Coolidge, 0 to 9, and then Unnatural Acts for Mayer. From there, they begin collaborating at a time that both poets were involved with significant collaborations. Their most significant collaboration of that period is The Cave with each other. The second period, from 1973 to 1975, is during the period when Mayer was living in New York and teaching at the Poetry Project, while Coolidge was living in Hancock, Massachusetts. They commiserate about publishing difficulties, they share gossip about mutual acquaintances and friends, and their letters start to take off into greater intimacy and performance. The third period is actually a gap in the correspondence from the latter half of 1975 to 1979, when Mayer lives near Coolidge in Massachusetts, and the only letters are during travel. We understand this period of living near each other to propel the intensity of the fourth period, which is the period covered in All This Thinking, from 1979 to 1982. The fifth period then is from 1982 to 1987, and the poets' paths begin to diverge as Mayer is enmeshed in the challenges on the New York scene, and Coolidge travels considerably and his work is being appreciated. The letters trail off in 1987 and then end entirely in 1995. All This Thinking contains the most rapid and lengthy exchanges in the correspondence, as well as sustained discussions of poetics and what it means to be a poet. These discussions occur alongside and entangled with descriptions of everyday life, responses to the language scene, and the poets' many acknowledgments of their aesthetic affiliation. In addition to documenting the significance of their friendship in relation to their writing practices then, these letters reveal an intimate connection between poetry, correspondence, and everyday life throughout. The book contains an intense exchange about the value of their work, which is emotional for both poets and even spills into one of Mayer's letters to Bergson and What's Your Idea of a Good Time? All this thinking might be considered alongside Mayer's significant epistolary writing during this period. The Desires of Mothers to Please Others in Letters is written from 1979 to 1980 during the period covered by all this thinking. Mayer references desires in a letter to Coolidge on August 14th, 1980, telling him there are many to you. What's Your Idea of a Good Time? Mayer's epistolary interview project with Bill Berkson occurs from 1977 to 1985, and all this thinking might be considered alongside Mayer's significant epistolary writing during the period. So we've nudged this quite strongly with the manuscript cut. The Desires of Mothers to Please Others in Letters is, oh, I had duplicated a sentence, so you guys already know that, and we can move on. For the book, we were working within the word count afforded by the press, and that's something that I kind of was looking for a venue to be able to say this, that this certainly shaped the selection for the book, but I think it ultimately helped us to see a path for the book that we may not have found otherwise. With more words to work with, we would have certainly tried to include the 1973 to 75 letters. And we found a different way to showcase those letters and the 1980s letters as well. Craig Dworkin has agreed to host the rest of the correspondence on the Eclipse archive, and we'll be making major infrastructural changes to accommodate the scale of the letters. So we'll be presenting the other two portions of the correspondence there. And because the 73 to 75 letters in particular include more handwriting, more components that are difficult to represent in print, we think the format of digital facsimiles with searchable transcriptions will be a mode of presentation that will do justice to the visual aspects of those letters. And so to close, I would like to acknowledge the difficulty of presenting this material without Stephanie, who proposed that we give this talk in 2020 and would be here if it were not for travel restrictions in China. Our collaboration on this project has been and continues to be incredibly nourishing for both of our other work. On my own parallel trajectory, I've been working on a project that focuses specifically on Mayer-Coolidge. And in this work, I take Coolidge and Mayer seriously as poet researchers whose endurance-oriented, temporally end-stop writing practices and complex ways of interacting with their own laboriously generated poetic milieus, I argue, challenge the limits of existing models for describing post-war poetry's engagement with experimental science. And it sounds like there's a lot of growing interest in taking particularly Mayer's work in relation to science seriously. And the logic of bringing Coolidge and Mayer together on that is that Coolidge, who's much more rejects the authority of science and science as it's practiced, still is engaging these modes in his work and is working in relation to Mayer's interest, and Mayer's more serious interest in science is more easily dismissed for a number of reasons, just as a woman, as the fact that she does not have formal training in science. But I take Mayer's science-orientedness not as a not in a reductive sense or simple sense, but as a sincere additive empiricist, really seriously, and think that the ways that we can kind of expand on that could be really generative in interdisciplinary spaces. So methodologically in that work, I implement features of a model of experimental authorship that I attribute to Coolidge and Mayer and to build an inquiry with their writing. And I understand this methodology to be inflected by the detail-oriented work on their letters, which for me has always been done with a partner, with Stephanie, in the interstices of their writing. So I thought I would close really by reading one of Mayer's short postcards to Coolidge from 1987, one that's not among the letters collected for the book, but one that opens out into collaboration. It's a favorite of mine. It's a key part of the conclusion of my current project and might allow me to end on a note of invitation to other practitioners and critical readers to find trajectories of interest in these letters as they become available across media. So I'm going to read the letter. To October Harvest Moon, dear Clark. Just as I am attempting to write a sort of delineation of McPhee's oranges for my science writing textbook. Did I tell you I was doing that? And it's about the feasible or not teaching of writing to science students so they can develop ideas in words. It occurred to me to inveigh upon you to make me a little list of your favorite science texts, which could include both books and articles, with little notes as to why you like them and what they're useful for in terms of experimentation. I hope I don't sound too much like Larry asking for lists. Just like any scientist, when I embark on a project like this, I initially think I'm doing it alone. Then I realize I have cohorts. Don't feel obliged to oblige this utopian assumption, but if you feel inspired, I'd be grateful because, as always, I don't really trust one mind and would like to have at least three, which with mine plus your two is perfect.